So what does the film Donnie Darko and my late grandfather Jack Armistead have in common? They both are pivotal reasons I decided to pursue a career as a director. So stay tuned to find out how these two personal connections ultimately influence my career path to become a filmmaker. In this video, I want to get more personal and tell my story of how I got into filmmaking and why. And I also want to unpack how understanding these reasons that you got into the industry can really help you in your own career and help you also maintain that North Star of achieving your own ultimate aspirations and always have a compass to guide you in your own career in Hollywood. If you're new here, I'm Jordan, and welcome back to my channel. I'm a narrative writer, director, and producer, and have been working in LA for the last 10 years. This channel is all about filmmaking techniques, the philosophy of art, creative and technical workflows, and what filmmaking can teach us about life. So sit back and let me tell you my story. Part 1. My grandfather, Jack Armistead. My grandfather's name was Jack Armistead, and among the many things that he loved were tennis, my grandmother, Betty Armistead, and movies. The family name for him was Poopah, and all of us in our family called him that his entire life. Poopah absolutely adored all of his grandchildren, including me and my cousin Christopher. Some of my earliest and fondest memories include sitting around the living room with my grandfather and the rest of our family, planted in front of the television, watching some classic movie of some kind that Poopah would always be the one to pick out. Poopah absolutely loved a lot of the films from the 70s and 80s, and he was a massive fan of the actors Robert Redford and Paul Newman. So a lot of the films that we would watch in the living room often had Paul or Robert starring in those movies. Some of his favorite movies included 3 Days of the Condor, The Natural, or The Sting. Poopah was also a lifelong sports fan and was also a lifelong teacher and coach of high school sports. So he also absolutely loved a lot of the sports films like Remember the Titans, Rudy, or his all-time favorite movie, Hoosiers, starring Gene Hackman. We must have watched Hoosiers over a dozen times in the living room of either the home that they used to live in Vero Beach, Florida, or the other home they had in Boone, North Carolina. Those early memories of sitting around the living room and watching these films together as a family were some of my favorite memories and almost feel sacred in a sense when I look back on them. It was my first experience of really seeing movies firsthand and appreciating the way that they could unify a family and you could share stories collectively together in the same room. So I often look back on these memories and associate it with family and time spent with the people that I love the most and have shared a lot of great memories with, especially growing up. In these early days, I also remember movies transported you to an entirely different time period or a different reality where it allowed you to daydream, especially as a young boy. I remember watching these fantastical stories of amazing heroes and heroic acts and stories of transformation and hope. And I remember feeling at the time like anything in the world was completely possible just due to the way these stories inspired you and made you feel like if you worked hard enough, you could absolutely achieve it, or you could change the lives of people for the better in the absolute most exciting way. Watching these stories with my grandfather also allowed me to exercise my ability to daydream in the most fantastical way and envision myself in the most amazing opportunities and the most amazing worlds and daydream the most exciting future possible that I could for myself. Especially as a shy and timid young boy that I was, I think this really allowed me to feel an extra layer of confidence that I could step out of that shell, I could become my own hero for my own story. These were the first instances where I understood that sometimes you just had to push yourself a little harder and see yourself in this position before you could actually push yourself outside your comfort zone to be able to achieve them. These movies also allowed me to see what was possible and the fact that you could inspire others with hope, courage, and resilience. And those are very much traits that I think I've really tried to exemplify in my day-to-day even now. Especially at a young age, I didn't have a ton of confidence in myself. And so when I watched these films, it inspired me to daydream, to want to be able to visualize myself in those roles and to be that heroic type of person that could help others and inspire others. And as I watched more of these movies and as I got older, it became clear that I wanted to be the orchestrator of these stories. I wanted to be the author. I wanted to tell these stories because I know how much those stories inspired me when I was younger, so that I could inspire a future generation of little kids sitting around the TV feeling that lack of confidence that I felt when I was a kid myself. To this day, I constantly chase that magical feeling of sitting around the living room with my family. And I realized I wanted to create movies that future families could sit around the TV watching and get inspired by, but also connect over. So this is the first major reason I ended up deciding to go into filmmaking, because I always associate filmmaking with the ability to share amazing memories with family and friends and people that I care about. But when I got older and started to make my own films, I realized how collaborative of an art form it really is. And because of this, I realized I was able to make a lot of projects with my friends. And in this way, I could create this real community of people that were making projects that hopefully inspired people. But I also got to connect with my own friends and family as I was making the projects. And this is something that very much just felt like home. My grandfather was also a lifelong teacher. And I think in many ways, by doing this YouTube channel, that's something I have inherited the spirit of from him, is teaching. The best part about teaching is the ability to make the lives of those you teach just that much better, enhance their knowledge, allow them to have even more opportunities for themselves. I hope that I'm able to do that as well with this channel for all of you out there who are watching it as well. Tragically, in December of 2020, we lost Poopah very suddenly. And I think in his absence, the thing that has only intensified within me is the love of making films, and really the desire to make films that I hope that he would love himself and he would want to screen for the whole family in the way that he did when I was growing up. I only wish that he was around to be able to see the future movies that I'm going to be able to make. And I truly hope that the movies that I do go on to make are the kind that he would be so proud to watch, he would be inspired by, and he would want to screen for the rest of the family, much in the way that he did for the films he watched when I was growing up. One of the things that I'm most appreciative of is he was able to see one of the films that I'm so proud of before he passed, which is Cuddle Buddies. That is one of the films that I still feel the most profound sense of accomplishment and completing. So the fact that he was able to see it and loved it, and he was able to let me know that before he passed, will always mean the world to me, and lets me know that hopefully I am on the right track of making films that he would love and he would want to watch of his own accord. So in honor of Jack Armistead, I wanted to read his obituary, since hopefully it gives you a small slice of the incredible man that he was. Jack M. Armistead passed away on the 21st of December of 2020 after a full life. He was 81 years old. Born in Hampton, Virginia to Lucille and Jack L. Armistead, he is a graduate of Appalachian State College and William & Mary. A lifelong teacher and a coach at both the high school and collegiate level, where he coached at Christopher Newport University, Jack was passionate about sports all his life. He especially loved basketball and then eventually tennis, which became his passion for the next 60 years. He picked up the game at the age of 21, and over the decades, he played in countless tournaments, ran a tennis store, was a pro at various country clubs, and coached a myriad of teams to various championships, along with being the best tennis coach his grandchildren could ever have asked for. This is true. The other love of his life was his wife, Betty, whom he met as an undergrad at Appalachian State and fell head over heels for. Shortly thereafter, they were married and enjoyed a marriage of over 59 years, in which they had 2 children, Lee and Leslie. Together, they traveled to Europe when she was stationed there as a U.S. Air Force civilian in the 1980s, and they lived a wonderful life afterwards in retirement, moving back and forth between Boone, North Carolina, and Vero Beach, Florida, where they lived in wonderful homes next to friends and relatives. Jack is survived by his wife, Betty, his son, Lee, and Lee's wife, Beth, his daughter Leslie, plus his grandsons Jordan and Christopher. A teacher by nature, he always imparted wisdom and important lessons to his family and everyone who knew him. I realize I've long been wanting to make the kind of film that my grandfather would have loved to watch with all of us in the living room together. Part 2. Donnie Darko. The other pivotal moment in my life that was the second half of convincing me to go into film and make a living as a director was the moment that I finished watching the film Donnie Darko, the director's cut, of course. I was a senior when I first watched the film, and I'll never forget the moment that the credits rolled and the film ended. I was sitting there watching the TV, mouth open, jaw was on the floor. I was completely captivated, so much so that I sat in the dark looking at a blank screen for nearly 20 minutes because of how unbelievably captivated I was by this viewing experience. I think I honestly had a religious experience that night, and I decided right then and there I was going to make films with the rest of my life, and the rest was history. I was completely mesmerized by the film and had never seen anything like it before, and never in my life, and still since, have I ever encountered a work of art that felt as if it was directly peeled from my own subconscious thoughts and being in such a personal and directly impacting way. It really does encompass all of my interests and the types of literature and movies I'm drawn to, the types of themes of identity and coming of age, the horror aesthetics that kind of go into it, along with the psychological thriller components. It really does wrap up every ounce of who I think I am into a movie. And so I feel like the best way to describe it is it's the movie counterpart of who I am as a person, if that makes any kind of sense. Donnie Darko really feels like it's completely talking directly to me through the screen, especially at the point in time in my life when I watched it, which was in high school. And it just so happens Donnie also is a high school student grappling with identity, grappling with his own psychological and mental health. And these are things that I was very much thinking about a lot at that time. So it almost felt as if it directly was speaking through the screen at me, which also mirrors a certain scene in the film where there's a portal that comes out of the TV that Donnie's watching. So it's funny how it all seems to kind of come together in one relevant theme around this film. It's as if the film was watching me in a sense, not just me watching the film, as if to say, I see you, and I'm going to speak directly to you and validate you and let you know there is a place for you here in this world, which was completely validating, especially as a high school student. It also displayed for me the possibility of what cinema could do and what it could be. From that moment on, I realized there was a way to directly speak to audiences and truly change people's lives through a film. And that was the light bulb moment that made me realize I need to make films. I need to make a movie at least once in my career that can speak to someone else out there in the audience as profoundly as this movie did for me. And I knew that that was my purpose from that moment on after finishing Donnie Darko. It's an extremely complex web of a film to weave through as an audience. And I love that it doesn't spoon feed you a lot of the subtlety or symbolism or metaphors that are happening within the movie that even touches on politics and mental illness and school culture and hypocrisy. It's just all of these incredible things wrapped up into one incredible piece of art. Every time you rewatch the film, it's as if you're uncovering a deeper and deeper layer. And I've seen it over 15 times now. It's incredible to me how many new things I still continue to get. And no other film that I've ever encountered has ever done this for me, not even Christopher Nolan films. These two things with my grandfather and Donnie Darko have really helped create a sense of comfort and inner peace in such a chaotic world. This comfort made me feel at peace, understood, and optimistic about the world and the future of it, and I think it very much still does. I also acknowledge that if you watch any one of my films to date, you'll find a little bit of Jack Armistead and Donnie Darko sprinkled across every single frame of every film I've ever done. Those two things have very much felt spiritually aligned. Part 3, the reasons you decide to pursue film. I really do think that the reasons that we decide to go into an industry like film really do matter. I realize that family, intellectual curiosity, psychology, and dark psychological drama are the things that excite me most as an artist, and something that I want to continue to infuse into any of the work that I make in the future. These things really do give me purpose because I really feel seen and understood when I operate within these confines. Understanding these reasons has really helped me identify what types of narratives or projects really excite me or ignite my creative creative spirit and are ones that feel worth pursuing, or ideas that I think I want to spend multiple years with to try to get made. I also think understanding this helps you create a North Star that you can continue to work towards in your career and your passions and your life. And you can get really clear on what that should look like for the long haul. Having this North Star can really help you to fall back on, especially when you reach certain roadblocks in your career or you aren't sure which direction you should try to take. So I think this helps continue to guide you and help you make and inform those decisions, and helps keep you moving forward, especially when you lose your footing. This can help you avoid projects or roles that really don't align with your unique purpose. I also think understanding your North Star helps you establish an authentic voice within your storytelling, and this is really something that's going to help set you apart from a lot of the other filmmakers that are making art or creating films. And in this way, you can speak with a much more genuine sense of your artistic voice and what you're trying to say with your work, so that you can truly create your own niche within the market. Remembering why you got into this field is also extremely crucial when you hit those periods of burnout or self-doubt. I've gone through these periods myself, and they are incredibly difficult to navigate. And so what helps me a lot of times is recentering myself and remembering the initial reasons I got into this field in the first place. It's helpful to remember the reasons you love filmmaking in the first place. When I have these periods of intense self-doubt, I always remember Poopah and I remember Donnie Darko, and those two things bring me the comfort and reassurance I do have a reason to pursue this, and there is still the genuine love of making art first and foremost over all the other financial aspects of this work. So I encourage you to identify what are the reasons that you decided to get into filmmaking. Ask yourself often, why do I love filmmaking, and how can I change it for the better? And remind yourself of these reasons whenever you feel discouraged. That concludes my personal journey into filmmaking, and I really want to thank you for sticking around to hear my story. I hope you found this inspirational and helpful in your own filmmaking journey. I want to hear from you. Comment below what are some of the reasons that you decided to get into filmmaking and why, or just let me know if you have a favorite story from your grandfather or your family. Or if you have a favorite scene from Donnie Darko or character, drop them below. I definitely want to hear from you all, so comment below. Let me know if there's any other filmmaking topics you want to see covered, and I will definitely make sure to cover them in a future video. If you want to learn more about my best acting audition tips, you can check out this video here on the top 5 ways to nail your audition and land the role. Thank you so much for tuning in to hear my story, and I will definitely catch you next week where we continue to cover different techniques to take your narrative film career to the next level. So I will definitely see you then.
Number
Number 2, number 3.
Little baby. I was about 2 months old, and so that's 1939. But then I was.
Yeah, he still stands like that Lee does with his arms.
Look, this is Lee and Leslie. Look, there's your mother. Look.
70-something.
77, 78.
Patty was still alive.
77.
From a young age, when I would visit Poopah on our vacations and trips just growing up, that we would always watch a movie, and it would usually be a classic film. I remember one of Poopah's favorites was The Sting with Paul Newman and Robert Redford.
How many times did you see the Hoosiers?
Oh, Hoosiers. Oh gosh, that's another classic.
Classic. I have 35 or 40 of the classics in VHS, and every time Jordan would come and visit, we could pick out 2 or 3 that he wanted to see, and they were always really good ones.
Yeah.
At Appalachian State, I was walking across campus one day, and I saw this new girl that I had never seen before walking on the campus, and I went up to her and asked her who she was, and she said that she was the sister of one of the professors there at Appalachian State, and she went to school at Winthrop College in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and she said she was supposed to have a date that weekend with the guy that I knew in town, Bob Watkins. I told her that Bob Watkins wasn't in Boone, he was in Chapel Hill, and he wouldn't be able to make the date that weekend, but that if he wasn't available, that I was. I didn't have a date that weekend. So we kind of like that, because we went on a date and we started dating, and then so was it a year or so later that we got married?
No, Jack.
How long?
How long? What really happened is I wanted to go to the place called Shorty's. It was a drive-in, and he was there, and Bob Watkins was there, and a lot of the boys used to hang out there. And I made Donna go with me because I was driving, and didn't want to go by myself. So that's when I met Bob Watkins, and he asked me to come back that weekend to go to a dance, because Appalachian had dances on Friday and Saturday night. Well, I was there so eager to be out of school. I went there on Wednesday afternoon. Nobody leaves state to come home. That's when I saw him walking across campus, and I went up to him and said, "Have you seen Bob Watkins?" And he looked at me and said, "You don't even go to school here, girl." You know? I said, "I know that. I just thought maybe you'd seen him. I'm supposed to have a date with him this weekend." So then he said, "Well, if you don't have anything to do tonight, I'll take you to the drive-in." And so I never did date Bob that weekend. We went to the drive-in and a couple of nights, and that was it. Hook, line, and sinker. We got married that August. And 53 years ago, so it's been a challenge.
Seems like just yesterday.
Yeah, right. It's been a challenge.
It's been a challenge, I'm sure.
Right. Well, it has been a challenge, but it's been wonderful, and we're glad he's still here. So, happy birthday.